Last night, I went to see the new A24 film, If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. And let me tell you, I was nervous about this one because it is my most anticipated film of 2025. I'm going to give you a quick spoiler-free review to let you know if this one is worth visiting theaters for. Then I'm going to move on to a spoiler-filled review where I'm going to give you my interpretation of some of the metaphors that are going on here in this quite harrowing drama. Quick synopsis for this film. With her life crashing down around her, Linda attempts to navigate her child's mysterious illness, her absent husband, a missing person, and an increasingly hostile relationship with her therapist. Straight off the bat, I can tell you confidently that this delivered in every aspect. Everyone has been talking about Rose Byrne's performance, and I can confirm it is amazing. I really hope that we see her be utilized in more complex roles in the future based off this incredible performance. I went into this film expecting something quite anxiety-inducing, but it ended up being a lot darker and more disturbing than I had expected, and it also ended up a little bit more cerebral than I had thought too. Don't get me wrong, there is still a lot of anxiety-inducing scenes in this film though. The best way I can describe If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You is like a mum version of the Safdie brothers film Good Time, replacing Robert Pattinson's character with Rose Byrne's character and making it more like mum-centric, but we see just this wild turn of events unfold in a similar way to what we see in Good Time. Funnily enough, one of the Safdie brothers actually produced this film, so go figure. Everything that happens throughout the film just gets more and more on top of Rose Byrne's character, Linda, and it just compounds until it's at this breaking point, which is very much how I felt when I was watching Good Time. So if you liked Good Time, I think there's a chance that you will very much enjoy the vibe of If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. I will warn you, I was like a ball of tension the entire time. So if you're not into anxiety, kind of driven, stressful films that have you on edge and have you coming out of the film like very discombobulated and kind of affected and impacted, then this definitely won't be for you. But if that is your thing, you will enjoy this. I loved it and honestly could not fault the film, and I'm about to get into more of the reasons why I thought it was so well done, and I think there's a lot more going on here than just a stressed out mum movie. In saying that, I can see some people not enjoying this, and I think that that is probably for personal reasons. It's very much a film that is centered around one character. So if you don't affiliate or resonate with Rose Byrne's character, who is a mum, she's going through a lot of the things that sort of any parent, but specifically a mum, could relate to, then it might be a little bit of a slog to get through. I could see some people even walking away from this being like, what was that movie about? Like, what was the point of it? What was I supposed to take away from it? If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You was incredibly shot, and it just all felt so real. Everything from the dialogue to the performances to the way it was shot. I just really felt like I was right there in Rose Byrne's shoes the entire time. I think the way that this was put to screen visually is very unique and exciting. So if you are someone who enjoys that kind of thing, I think it's worth seeing at the cinema for that experience. It's very claustrophobic. There's a lot of very close-up shots of her face. And like I said, her performance is really, really great. So I would highly recommend that you see this one in theaters, but like I said, I loved it. All right, now let's move on to the spoiler part of the review and discuss what that big hole in her apartment's ceiling really meant. You've been warned, lots of spoilers incoming, so if you haven't seen the film, click off now and come back once you've watched it and we can debrief. Welcome to the deeper discussion about this movie. Thank you for being here. I would love to know your thoughts on If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. So please let me know below. There's so much to discuss here. I'm just going to focus on the things that really stuck out to me, but feel free to let me know below what stood out for you. Something that struck me in the first 30 minutes of this film was the fact that we never saw the face of the child. And I was wondering if we would at any point. And obviously we get the reveal of her face at the very end. And I think that was done on purpose. But I just thought this was such a clever decision by the director, because if we had have seen the daughter's face, we would have shifted our empathy, I think, a little bit more onto her and away from Rose Byrne, and it would have just taken away from the experience and just the central focus completely 100% here on the character of Linda. By making the child this faceless character, it allowed us to just fully sink into Rose Byrne's declining state of mental health, and it also amplified her loneliness too. We see the child revealed at the end when Rose Byrne is lying on the beach after running into the waves, and I think this signals a catharsis that has been reached now that she is exposed and knows she has to pull herself out of the hole. This brings me nicely to the gaping hole in her living room ceiling, which is a central theme for the movie. We have the hole in the ceiling, the hole in her child's stomach that the feeding tube is in, the hole that's left by the absent husband who is working away, played by Christian Slater, the hole inside Rose Byrne's character, Linda herself, as she struggles her way through the everyday. What I found really interesting was that Linda keeps coming back to the apartment. And I think that this is because she's trying to obviously escape the monotony of the looking after a sick child, filling up that bag with all the gloop, the noise of that machine just constantly going and being in this chaotic environment of the motel. So she's going back to the apartment because she's looking for solace, but she's also fixating on this hole in the ceiling. And it seems like every time she goes back, it's getting worse. And I couldn't figure out if that was actually really happening in real life, in reality, or if this was partially the lens that Linda was viewing everything through, which was obviously getting darker and darker. I saw this hole in the ceiling that was decaying and getting grosser and grosser, kind of similar to the rabbit left out in Repulsion, how it's decomposing and it's just getting worse and worse as the main character, played by Catherine Deneuve, gets more and more paranoid and sinks into this very unstable mental state. In her inebriated state, she starts seeing things, having these hallucinations and memories. These are really well done, in my opinion. As she stares through this hole, we get more insight into what is plaguing her, namely the flashback or the dream of the daughter having the feeding tube put in the hospital, which I think signals to us that this is where Rose Byrne as a mother cracked, and the trauma has been building since then. She's staring into the hole looking for answers, and she is staring at it hoping it will go away. She's staring at it and thinking, how did I get here? And then she's maybe also wanting it to just swallow her up. At least this is how I viewed it. The hole in the ceiling is also intrinsically linked to the hole in her daughter's stomach that is feeding her because she won't eat. We don't really get the full story here, but it's very clear that she maybe has some kind of sensory problem with eating, and she's struggling with that. And obviously that is one of the most stressful things I could ever imagine as a parent. Anybody who is watching who has a child will know that food becomes very stressful when you have a toddler. You are trying to get them to eat. And, I have a 5-year-old, there's lots of things he won't eat. And as a mum specifically, I think we feel really guilty when they're not eating certain things. They haven't eaten enough. It's a real big point of stress. And I think that this was like a really hyperbolic version of that on screen. As we move through the film, the doctor informs Rose Byrne that it's simply a process of pulling the tube out. It's not a surgical operation. And you can see Linda's character, her mind reeling. And I knew that she was going to pull that tube out because she wanted this nightmare to be over. When she finally pulls the tube out of her daughter's stomach, which was very disturbing and almost kind of Cronenbergian, I don't know if that's a term. Once she pulls that out, the way the room goes silent, the red light goes off and those blinking sounds of the machine are finally gone. It's kind of the only reprieve we ever get as viewers, and the only relief that Linda gets from this life that she's just stuck in, this nightmare. And she's even smiling a little bit in that scene, and she kind of, her shoulders lower because she's like, finally. And I think she perceives it that she's in control because she's pulled this tube out. The problem is no more. She wants that tube out. She wants that hole fixed. She wants to get back in her house. She wants things to go back to normal. I thought that this was very clever, the way that her pulling the tube out of her daughter's stomach coincided with her running immediately to the house, because these two things are linked. I think that this is like a bit of a metaphor here, like I said, with all of the holes. Obviously, being a woman, I don't mean to be overly graphic here, but it's like her child has come out of a hole. It all starts with a hole, and then the hole in the movie is like this central thing. So we see Linda return to the other hole that plagues her, only to find her husband there with all of these workmen, the hole patched up and bright white paint on the walls. It was literally like a different home and kind of unbelievable to see how quickly all of this had been solved, yet Linda had been trying to do the same thing for weeks now. Christian Slater's character even says, "You just need to know how to talk to these guys, honey," like insinuating that, if you speak to them right, then they will fix it up and get it done, because up until now they had been basically ignoring every call that Linda made. They disappeared for a week. They made no progress. And I think this was, getting at the fact that women can be ignored when they have a problem. Not all the time. I'm not saying all men are like that or anything, but I do think that, generally as a woman who, you go to get your car fixed or you go to see like a male doctor with some kind of pain problem, like you can be ignored. And whether it's conscious or subconscious, I think that sometimes women are seen as, making a big deal out of nothing. And Rose Byrne was definitely not doing that. But I just found it so darkly funny that she opened the door and he was there in his sailor outfit, like, I'm this big man and I've got all these other men here and we've fixed the problem. And then she's standing there and she looks even more crazy than she really is, because she's just a victim of her circumstance. And I really felt her frustration in that moment. I thought it was also quite humorous. Linda was in no fit state to be dealing with any of the things that she was dealing with. She was also then on top of that a psychologist in her day job. So she was having to absorb everyone else's problems too. And this just kind of added to the stress. It was just like one battle after another, not to mention another film that came out this year, but really was one battle after another for Linda here. I felt deeply empathetic with Linda despite the really bad decisions that she was making. Obviously, you would never leave your child alone in this motel. You would never even think about like buying drugs off of the dark web with ASAP Rocky, but she does all of these things, or she nearly does all of these things. And I could forgive her completely, which is in stark contrast to a recent film that I saw, Die My Love, which I was as excited to see and really looking forward to, and felt very disappointed by, because I wasn't able to relate to the character and I wasn't able to forgive a lot of her behavior or even understand it. Whereas with Linda, I really, really got it. I was right there with her and I was like, man, I just want you to have a break, because I can see that you are trying and everyday life is getting you down, whether it's giving in and getting the hamster and then it ending up getting run over by the car, which was just so bleak and dark, or the parking guy, hassling you and trying to fine you, your husband's away. It was just like, how many things can we throw at this woman? Her cries for help when she says in therapy sessions, "Someone tell me what to do. It's not meant to be like this. It can't be this way." They're words that I have spoken exactly when I had a baby. It's like you get this whole new life and set of responsibilities dumped on your lap, and your life changes in an instant. You love and resent your children. You protect them, yet sometimes you hurt them through no fault of your own, because we are all human. And If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You showed that perfectly. For me, this film captured how it feels to be a woman in the modern world, trying to smile and be nice, trying to bring up your child in a world that doesn't want to help you to do that and just wants you to get on with it. I also liked that this was the story of an ordinary person, someone with a job, someone, who seems fairly intelligent, someone with a husband, someone with a family unit who simply has just had a series of extremely unfortunate events that have broken her. And this can happen to anyone. It's a portrait of a woman pushed to the edge. And at times it kind of felt like a female version of the movie Falling Down. I truly felt like this rectified the really disappointing experience I had with Die My Love, and I am very, very excited to see what Mary Brownstein will do again in the future, what projects she will take on, because she obviously has a unique voice, and I think she has a lot more female characters in her to put to screen. So I'm really excited to see what she will do next. I could go on and on about If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. So please let me know below if there's anything else that stood out. I haven't touched on Conan O'Brien's character, the therapist. There was also some slight Maybe was there a romantic thing going on with them? I'm not really sure. I did hear Linda say, I love you when he left the room, and I was trying to kind of decipher what was going on there. But the whole and all of that is really what stuck out to me and the metaphor there. So please let me know below. If you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. This is a new channel and I am still finding my feet doing reviews, but I love structuring them this way, giving you like a quick spoiler-free version and then diving in and talking about the film, because I find a lot of reviews on YouTube, whilst there are some really good ones, it can sometimes be more of just like a recap of the plot, which isn't really what I want. I want to, see someone talking about how the film made them feel, what they took away from it, and like really get into the plot line and the characters and all of that kind of stuff. So let me know what you prefer. And thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.